We have lots to discuss in tonight's video, including the latest trade talk around the NHL. Could the New Jersey Devils be a player for JT Miller? There's new speculation facing Miller, and the Devils might be one of the landing spots for him. Plus, we have some other trade talk around the NHL involving the Pittsburgh Penguins. And according to one NHL insider, the Blackhawks are getting calls on defenseman Seth Jones. We also have a suspension for the Islanders forward Tsyplakov, who's facing a 3-game ban, which was a really odd scenario. After then we'll discuss that situation. Plus, John Klingberg has a new home in his return to the NHL. We'll discuss his new contract, plus some other news, including a goalie goal tonight between the Penguins and Sabres. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today. Currently away from my normal setting at home, currently at a hotel, away for the weekend. So you'll be getting a little bit of a different look here for the next couple of videos. There is some pre-recorded stuff that I did before I left that will be posted to the channel over the weekend as well. So you'll see that. So no confusion. I'm not currently there, away for a couple days. But starting first here with the suspension that came out a couple hours ago, earlier today, from Islanders forward Tsyplakov from the player safety department. It's kind of a weird scenario. I mean, that Islanders-Flyers game got a little out of hand, obviously, for this scenario. Tsyplakov hits Ryan Poehling, with an illegal check to the head, which looks pretty clear. The most confusing part about all this is that it was called a major penalty so that the referees could review it. They review the call, and it's deemed not only is it not a major, it's not a penalty. But yet then we find out later from player safety that it's a 3-game suspension. I don't understand how it can not be a penalty but be a 3-game suspension. To me, it looked like a penalty all day long. Original call to me looked like it should stand as a major. So confusing, doesn't make any sense. Like I said before numerous times on this channel, I understand the Department of Player Safety sometimes can be tricky with their calls, trying to be consistent, but the lack of consistency is by far the biggest part that sometimes we just never know what we're going to get. And after, you think the refs on the ice would be a little bit more in sync with what player safety is looking at. So it's confusing. Now, with that scenario as well, another fine was handed out. Flyers forward Scott Laughton also was fined $5,000 for cross-checking Tsyplakov. So certainly a scenario that didn't go well, was not handled well by the referees. As I mentioned, we also got big news today that John Klingberg is about to make his return to the NHL and has signed on with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, there was talk a few days ago that he was getting close to making a return and that we'd probably get a decision sometime either this week or next week. It came a little sooner than we were thinking. At the time, the first batch of teams that were listed as the frontrunners included Edmonton, a potential return to Toronto where he last played, and then Ottawa was in the mix as well. But now he ends up going to the Edmonton Oilers. So clearly a player that could chase a Stanley Cup with Edmonton. Hard to say. So he signed on basically a $1 million 1-year prorated contract. So it's $1 million. Of course, he's not going to get that amount. It'll be prorated for the rest of the year. And there's a $350,000 signing bonus included as well. So it's not a performance bonus. That is just a signing bonus. So he'll get that up front, and then the remaining salary prorated for the remainder of the year. So really, it's a pretty low-risk deal for Klingberg. If he looks good after surgery, like we've seen some other players, like Patrick Kane, for example, if he can get anywhere near what he was doing before, he had this problem with his hip, he was a pretty good defenseman for a good stretch. The last couple of years that he played in the NHL, he was dealing with this and putting off getting surgery and wasn't quite as productive. And now, obviously, because of it, also had struggled to get a longer-term contract. So we'll see what happens, but this could be a nice find for Edmonton. It could maybe not even work out if he's not going to be as good as one hoped. But like I said, it's a low-risk scenario. If it's not looking good, they can always put him on waivers and have the contract buried. So the fact they don't have to give up assets to get a potential top 4 D-man, I think it's worth the gamble here for Edmonton. Another signing today, the Blue Jackets have extended Jake Christensen on a 2-year contract extension, $975,000. And another update as well, Eric Chernak, the Lightning defenseman, left last night's game due to injury and is going to miss time, and they've recalled Max Crozier. Now, tonight, the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game was kind of exciting. We got some NHL history made. For starters, Alex Nedeljkovic scored a goalie goal. So, of course, goalie goals are always fun, cool thing to witness and see. Obviously, we don't get a lot of them, but there has been at various levels of hockey, there seems to be an increase in these here as of late. Still, in the grand scheme of things in history, not a lot of them, but it's always a cool experience when you get to see one. So Alex Nedeljkovic got the score on the Buffalo Sabres tonight, and he also becomes the first goalie in NHL history to have a goal and an assist in the same game. I seen one NHL reporter, one of the Penguins beat writers, actually made a post saying, cool experience to see him actually get a Gordie Howe hat trick after he scored the goal. There was about a minute or so left in the game. If he only could have gotten into a fight now, made that historical moment, but it's history in itself. Being a goal and an assist, that's never happened before, so he'll go down in NHL history. He's the first goalie to do that, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he's scored goals. I believe in the AHL, and I think ECHL as well. I'll have to check that, double check that. I'm not 100% that I'm accurate on that, but I think he may be the only goalie to ever score at those three levels, which is pretty crazy when you think about it, because it's not a common thing that you ever see really accomplished. Now, on the rumor mill, we've got a variety of teams to take a look at. One, according to Darren Dreger, the Chicago Blackhawks have been getting calls on Seth Jones. Now, he's making $9.5 million per year on his for his cap hit. He's got a full no move clause, so he'd have a full say on where he goes if he goes anywhere. And he's signed for another 5 or 6 years. So it's not an easy contract to move at all. But he's taken a lot of criticism as of late. He's playing a lot of minutes, and he's, obviously the top defenseman on that team, especially when it comes to looking at experience and what he's supposed to be doing there. And he's not getting it done. He has not been good. A lot of bad defensive errors. So it makes you wonder, what teams would be willing to do. But a lot of teams, from what we've heard, kind of feel like if he was on a better team and he had, I guess, maybe even more motivation to play for something more. Obviously, times are tough in Chicago. Even listening to Connor Bedard, sometimes he's having a tough time with all the losing as well. It can be a little bit difficult on your mental health. And, maybe if Jones was on a stronger team, surrounded by better players, he might be able to do better, and that he might be able to bounce back and, just be more of a contributor and more productive. Now, that's kind of difficult to say. I'm surprised to hear that the Blackhawks are getting calls. Not to say that they're out there shopping him, because clearly, as much as they've probably been frustrated with his play as of late, they do need some veterans around, and they've obviously overpaid some of these vets. Now, at one point, there was a little bit of and it wasn't anything serious or from a reliable source, but I know there were some people wondering if his old GM, Stan Bowman, who signed him to that contract in Chicago, might come trying to bring him to Edmonton, but I don't see that working out. That would be too tough. The only way they can make that work is if they trade like Darnell Nurse for him, and I'm not really sure they really want to move bad contract for bad contract. Nurse has had his moments, I think, since the playoffs last year, where he's been better at times. In that contract, still probably doesn't age well, not the greatest, but I don't see the benefit to the Oilers to swap those two guys. I really don't. As much as you can criticize the Nurse contract and say that he's overpaid, I don't know that bringing in Seth Jones doesn't make them any better. So we'll see what happens. It's the fact that the Hawks are getting calls on Jones is something, but again, doesn't mean it's going to go too far. Now, Taylor Hall is a more likely name in Chicago as a veteran guy that's going to have a little bit more fanfare and a little bit more attention around NHL teams, but again, they should be cautious here. Taylor Hall, obviously former first overall picks, had a pretty decent career, battled a lot of injuries, and in my opinion, still a decent, good player, but not really the impact player that he had the ability to be, when he was younger, even as much as, 3 or 4 years ago. So we'll see. Just because they're getting calls on Jones doesn't mean that he's going to be dealt, but at least the possibility exists because of the interest. A couple of teams that appear ready to throw in the white towel and kind of call it a day here and start doing some business are Pittsburgh and Nashville. We did get word from various different reports here. One on the Penguins saying that Kyle Dubas has not changed his mind. Obviously, the Penguins had a bad start to the year. You could say in the last probably 4, 5, 6 weeks, the Penguins overall has been a bit better. They've definitely shown some improvements and won a few more games, got themselves back into the race. But Dubas has not changed his plans. Like, they still haven't been the most consistent, right? So they're still far enough out of a playoff spot that it's still really tough to overcome that challenge. So, at the end of the day, Dubas apparently is ready to make moves. The report from Josh Yeo of the Athletic says that Marcus Pettersson is probably as good as gone. He's one veteran defenseman to watch, and there's going to be other veterans that are likely going to find themselves on the move here as well. So hard to say exactly who, but Pettersson's one name definitely getting attention for sure. If your name is Crosby or Malkin, you're probably not leaving, but they're about the only ones that are really safe from really facing any kind of any movement here. So they're wide open for business. Dubas, I know, recently spoke to the media, kind of acknowledged some of the mistakes that the early going here with his tenure with the team, and he's looking to right the ship here. So moving on from some veteran players would be a wise move. Now with JT Miller in Vancouver, last night's game against LA was horrible. Another bad loss for the Canucks. Miller definitely at times again looked checked out. The effort not where it needs to be. If I'm not mistaken, I believe his ice time was cut back as well. I've seen some new reports today suggesting that the Devils might be a bit of a I don't know what to call it, not necessarily a wild card team here, but like just somebody that's, low-key very interested and could be in the mix for Miller's services. Now, of course, keep in mind, I think the Devils are a team that can put together a very good offer. I do wonder, as we talked about yesterday, I know some people think the remarks from Nemec's interview in the Slovak media might have been blown out of proportion a little bit or mistranslated or what have you, but at the end of the day, you look at their decor roster and the fact that they're trying to extend Kovacevic right now, it's tough to see a long-term future. Like, our guys like Nemec or Casey, they're going to have a tougher time nailing down that full-time spot and getting to their next contract, right? So, could Nemec be included in a package, maybe with a guy like a Dawson Mercer, for example? They've also got lots of other picks and prospects that could be in the mix. I think the Devils could put up a heck of a package, for a guy like Miller. Now, of course, Miller would have to, agree to any deal. He's got a no-move clause, whereas a guy like Pettersson does not. But I still think that Pettersson's a less likely trade. He's a lot younger. And as much as you could criticize Pettersson to some degree for, some people think, his ability to not deal well with JT Miller is as much of his problem as it is JT's. But at the end of the day, Miller might be kind of wearing out his welcome here. It's just kind of tough. I mean, I know we've heard lots of stories about Miller over the last few years, especially talking about how badly he wants to win and he's passionate and all that. But, if you look at his history and his track record, and maybe he's starting to wear out a little thin here, kind of wear his welcome on his franchise. It's kind of difficult to see a path right now, at least for Pettersson and Miller both, to remain long-term members of the Canucks. Now, like I said, his last game especially, it just seems like to me, he looks checked out. And, if he's not engaged and he's ready to roll and move on, that's not where you want him to be if he's still leading your team on the ice. So clearly, we've heard different teams that have been interested in Miller and Pettersson, but low-key the Devils might be a really interesting team to watch. Miller would be an interesting ad for sure, but they've got the pieces there to make Vancouver a very, very interesting deal. So let me know your thoughts on Pettersson maybe end up in New Jersey. The Penguins and Preds, are they going to be waving a white flag and selling off some veteran players? And could Seth Jones actually move? Also, love to know everybody's thoughts on the Tsyplakov suspension. Certainly seems a little bit questionable. The fact that it wasn't a penalty, that's just so confusing. I don't know how these referees and player safety can be so differently opinionated on this one play. And let me know your thoughts on the Klingberg signing as well. So if you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.